Yeah, good morning. Do we still have the echo, or is it pretty good? Great. Well, hey, it's amazing to be here with you guys. There's a lot of people doing some amazing work in all sorts of areas of brain science and neuroscience here. Sorry, is a problem? All right. Within STEM science, our focus is on using consumer neurotechnology to improve sleep. So looking forward to telling you all about that. I wanted to broaden it a little bit and just talk about sort of what I see as the next big wave in consumer neurotech. And when I talk about consumer neurotechnology, I'm not necessarily referring to where does somebody buy a product or even who pays for it. It's really about products that people can use in their everyday lives, in their homes, to improve all aspects of their brains and mental health. So consumer neurotech has been a trend or topic for over a decade now, and it really hasn't sort of cut through the clutter or risen above the noise floor with consumers. There have been some false starts. I highlighted a few of them here, but going back even to 2013, there were companies that gained a little bit of traction, gained a little bit of success and buzz, but then ultimately fizzled out. What I'd like to talk about and make the case here is that these earlier waves have really enabled a situation that we're at now, where we're right on the cusp of a third wave of successful consumer neurotechnology. And I want to tell you all about that third wave, but I want to look at it through a bit of a case study, through the lens of sleep. So I'll get back to the third wave of consumer neurotech, but I want to talk about sleep for a moment and why it's important as an area to dig into. So most of us, when we think about sleep, we think about the sleep environment. How dark is your room? How soft is your pillow? What's your bedtime, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is sleep is a brain activity. It's literally a series of electrical patterns in your brain as you transition from waking state characterized by high beta, infrequent, unpredictable brain waves through stages of lower frequencies and more predictable sinusoidal brain waves. You go first when you climb into bed, you're awake, and then you start to doze off. That's characterized by a dominant brain rhythm called alpha, around 10 hertz. Then you go into light sleep, characterized by theta waves, and then into deep sleep or slow wave sleep. That's the good stuff. That's considered to be the most restorative and beneficial stage of sleep. All of us go through this same broad cycle 4 and 5 times a night if we're lucky. But the details are actually unique to you. So my alpha frequency might be 10.2 hertz. Yours might be 9.5 or 9.8. Those little details or nuances make up your individual sleep signature. Okay? There are really 3 reasons why sleep is a great case study for talking about neurotechnology. And I want to go through them, but the first and primary reason is because it's so fundamentally important. It's truly the foundation of every aspect of mental and physical health. Matthew Walker is one of our science advisors at STEM Science. He's also a professor right here at UC Berkeley, and he wrote a fantastic book called Why We Sleep. I recommend it to everyone. It's a science book, but it's very accessible, very interesting, and very motivating. In that book and in his public speaking, he calls sleep Mother Nature's best effort yet at immortality. And it's true. Sleep has a positive effect on every aspect of health, including, of course, cognition and preventing some of the cognitive decline that Susan just talked about, but also on obesity and type 2 diabetes, heart disease, mental health, depression, even risk of injury, as well as, of course, all of the stuff that our parents told us around improving your mood, improving your outlook, making you more optimistic, making you more productive at work, making you better equipped to get along with your significant others or family members, on and on and on. I could talk all day about why sleep is important, but I'll just leave it as, I can't think of a more fundamental thing that could improve individual and public health. Second reason why sleep is a good case study for consumer neurotech is because it's universal. Everybody sleeps. Every one of us was doing it just a few hours ago. Hopefully none of us are doing it right now. But in addition to the fact that everybody sleeps, many of us struggle with sleep. In fact, 1 in 3 adults, according to the US Center for Disease Control, is clinically sleep deprived. The problem gets worse as we get older. 46% of seniors struggle with insomnia. If you ask people whether they're satisfied with their sleep, I don't know, are you guys satisfied with your sleep? More than half will express dissatisfaction with the quantity or quality of their sleep. And as a result, millions and millions of people, 18 million adults in the US, take prescription sleeping pills, even though these are some of the worst drugs out there. They carry the same black box warning as cigarettes because they're habit forming, they carry extreme side effect risks, and they don't actually work to deliver restorative, beneficial sleep. They just kind of knock you out like a mallet in a Tom and Jerry cartoon. Another 12 or 13 million adults take over-the-counter sleep aids 15 or more times per month. This could include melatonin, but it also includes people taking Benadryl off-label, people taking NyQuil, people taking CBD gummies. We're in Berkeley, that's no problem with that, but it's ultimately not going to be a salve to the sleep deprivation epidemic. So sleep is important, it's universal. It's also measurable. And that's something that is a bit of a nuance, a bit of an important and maybe less obvious point about why sleep is a good application for consumer neurotechnology. If you compare it to something like mood, anxiety levels, focus and attention, other aspects of our neurology, aspects of our mental activities that are problems for many of us at the forefront, it's very difficult to systematically measure your mood. There's advances and there's exciting ways of doing that coming to the forefront in neuroscience. But sleep is something we've been able to measure very accurately for decades in a sleep lab using techniques called polysomnography. That gives us a framework for very specifically measuring sleep quality, sleep duration, sleep health. And even without advances like polysomnography, it's pretty easy for someone to know how many hours they slept. You might get it wrong. You might not always remember every wake event over the course of the night, but there's at least a metric in place to know if you're doing better or worse with respect to sleep. So sleep's super important, universal, everybody sleeps, and it's measurable. For these 3 reasons, there have been a lot of consumer neurotech startups and big companies that have focused on sleep as a target for their applications. And these are useful to illustrate these first couple of waves of consumer neurotech. Wave number 1, sleep measurement. These are headbands that have built-in EEG sensors. EEG sensor is just a type of sensor that measures brain activity non-invasively. So you wear it on your forehead and you can detect prefrontal brainwaves. And you can use this to allow people to measure their sleep quite accurately in the home. Again, none of these have really taken off. There was a company going back more than a decade called Zeo that was a hot startup that fizzled out. There have been more recent startups that have pivoted away from this technology. And there's still some out there, but they haven't quite cut through the clutter. Well, why not? Number 1, there actually are quite a number of ways of measuring sleep out there, and some of them may be a little less accurate than EEG sensor, but they also don't require you to wear headbands with your sleep, which a lot of people don't want. So, that bit of competition, I think, has affected these companies. But there's a more important reason why I don't think they've been successful, which is if you're one of the 70 million people that struggles with sleep decline, these devices just tell you what you already know. And that's extensible, that observation, right? If you're someone who struggles with exercise, an exercise tracker is going to tell you what you already know. Every one of these measurement devices, these so-called quantified self devices, struggle with customer churn. They struggle with attrition as customers stop using them because they're not going to learn new things from them and they're not going to actually solve the problem that they have. So that sets up wave number 2. Wave number 2 is at-home neurostimulation devices. These devices actually use very gentle and low levels of electrical current applied prefrontally, occipitally, or to the vagus nerve in order to induce brain activity. And that is a technology that's been used in neurology labs for decades. It's a very well understood process where you can use electrical current to entrain brain activity by, the brain is an electrical system, of course. So by applying electrical current close to the brain, you can induce a magnetic or an electromagnetic field that induces neuronal activity and creates brain wave. So these products promise to improve sleep by encouraging brain activity that's associated with sleep. The reason that they haven't taken off is because they don't work, at least not for everyone. So everyone, like I talked about, has a unique sleep signature. Everyone's brain is different. Everyone's sleep patterns are different. And when you try to apply a one frequency fits all kind of electrical wave in order to induce brain activity, it's going to work for some, but not for others. And when you're in a consumer product market, works for some, but not for others is kind of a death sentence because you end up with bad reviews, bad word of mouth, and customers that are returning the product because it didn't work. And so these products, again, have found some great applications in medical environments. There's fantastic work around what's called TDCS, transcranial electrical stimulation, as an application to help improve the lives for people struggling with drug-resistant depression, for example. But that's in a clinical environment where a doctor can adjust the stimulation protocol in order to make sure that works for the patient. It's also in an environment where that patient, many of them, don't have an expectation that because I saw this advertised in my Facebook feed, it's definitely going to work for me, right? When you go to a doctor, you know that there may be a bit of iteration around your treatment protocol. For consumer products, not so much. And so you end up with this set of products that hasn't exactly taken off. Well, hopefully this backstory has set us up for my explanation of wave number 3, which is closed loop neuromodulation. Long term, but what it means is combining the best of waves 1 and 2 while solving some of the problems that they had in order to create something that can work very broadly to improve people's lives by both reading brain activity and then combining that with personalized brain stimulation. So STIM Science has created a sleep aid built entirely around this observation, around this wave. Somni is our headband. It's actually available now, and we're shipping it to hundreds of customers. The product uses closed loop neurostimulation to measurably and directly improve sleep. It's the only consumer device that uses closed loop neurostimulation, meaning reading brain activity and then using that brain activity to personalize the frequencies, weightages, durations of stimulation. So here's how it works. The headband has a built-in EEG sensor. You put it on at bedtime and it reads your brain activity. It reads a baseline of your individual sleep signature. And then that data gets wirelessly uploaded to our cloud server, which has an algorithm, a machine learning algorithm that uses brain activity along with your sleeping patterns to figure out the exact optimal set of frequencies and weightages to stimulate at. And it's going to be different for everyone because everybody's brain is different. But it's also going to vary night to night for any individual because your sleeping patterns vary over time. You might have a different bedtime on the weekend versus the weekday. You might have sleeping patterns that vary seasonally. Many people struggle with sleep in the summertime or in the wintertime specifically. You might have a big presentation today, and you might have different sort of levels of baseline anxiety the night before. All of those factors are going to feed into our algorithm in order to personalize the stimulation. The algorithm delivers 15 minutes of gentle electrical stimulation. And at the end of that 15 minutes, you take Somni off and put it on the headband, or put it on the charging nightstand. So what we've seen is that with that 15-minute stimulation at bedtime, it not only cuts the time that it takes people to fall asleep, but it improves the quality of that whole night's sleep by more than any sleeping pill. The reason that it's so effective is because it's personalized. So we've done an 1,800 plus night real world study with Somni. This is real people using it in their homes, in the environment of the home with all the variation that you might expect. And what we did was we tested the importance of the personalization protocol relative to just using one frequency fits all. And what we saw is that with one size fits all, there was really no significant improvement in sleep. It added 3 minutes of sleep duration on average, which again is going to result in very mixed reviews because some people might add 15 or 20 minutes of sleep, but other people might lose 15 or 20 minutes of sleep. When we turn on the personalization algorithm and give you a couple of nights of just training our models with your individual brain rhythms, 22 minutes of added sleep duration. Now that's significant. That's something that you're going to notice and is going to improve your life. Over a week or two, as our algorithm learns not just your individual brain rhythms, but also your sleeping patterns, so your weekend versus weekday bedtime, all those other factors that feed into your individual sleep performance. We saw a 37-minute increase in average sleep duration. That means that for many people, 30% of the people in this study, they were adding an hour of sleep duration to their sleep. If you take an insomniac and you give them an extra hour of sleep, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's going to be life-changing. Not only are they going to feel better the next day, but they're going to be better equipped to make all sorts of lifestyle changes around improved exercise, improved diet, improved performance, et cetera, et cetera. I've had customers tell me that they feel 10 years younger after a month of using Somni, because when you struggle with sleep deprivation, it literally is the first and only thing that you got to fix before you can go make other health improvements. We've published these results. Our science team has published these results in the Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, gone through peer review. And so these are real significant findings. And then we've also looked at the performance in a randomized controlled study in a sleep lab that we operate here in Berkeley. And we saw similar results. We compared those results in the sleep lab to other peer-reviewed polysomnography studies for other types of sleep aids. And what we saw is that on average, Somni is 4 times as effective as taking a melatonin. It's twice as effective as CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. That's what your doctor will recommend today if you go and tell them that you're struggling with insomnia. And CBTI is great. It works. It's an 8-week course of therapy where your doctor will advise, or a sleep clinician or a coach will advise on all sorts of lifestyle changes you can make to improve your sleep, as well as behavioral changes. So it's worthwhile, but many people don't have access to it. Many others just don't have the time or willingness to go through an 8-week course. This is 15 minutes, not 8 weeks. Somni is 50% more effective than Ambien in improving sleep. But more importantly, it doesn't have any of the side effects of Ambien. It just delivers healthy, natural, restorative sleep, rather than creating a risk of habituation or addiction, of creating hangover effects or drowsiness the next day. And, it's just something that is generally unpleasant. Ambien is just generally unpleasant for people that are on it. If you talk to them, many of them are motivated to get off of it. So I went pretty deep on sleep there. I could go super deep because I love talking about it, but I also want to wake you up by highlighting the fact that sleep is not the one and only application for consumer neuroscience or for this third wave of closed loop neuromodulation. And in fact, there's been some really exciting and interesting work in academia suggesting a lot of promise with this type of technology. So looking ahead a bit to other applications, there have been very interesting, well-received research studies that have shown using the same type of electrical stimulation, same locations as Somni is stimulating, but just at different times of day with different protocols, a significant improvement in both working and long-term memory, as well as improvements in attention and focus for people struggling with adult ADHD. And same story with mood and anxiety disorders and other neurological conditions. All of these things that I'm talking about share the same basic three ingredients with sleep in that they're incredibly important to both personal and broad public health. They're universal, even if we're not clinically ADHD. All of us could use more focus at various times. All of us certainly could use improved working and long-term memory or improved mood at various times. So they're universal. And increasingly, they're measurable. We're not yet at the same standard of measurability for things like memory or attention as we are with sleep, which has been studied in the lab extensively over the last several years. But the science is progressing incredibly fast. And so as we see that progress in academia and research in neurotechnology, I predict that we will see this wave of closed-loop consumer neurostimulation devices start to come to bear to allow people to apply these technologies as an alternative to one-size-fits-all therapies or neuropharmaceuticals. So in closing, Somni is available today, and I love talking about it. So if you are interested in learning more about STEM science, Somni, or what we're working on, or its applications in consumer or clinical or business settings, please pull me aside over the course of the day. And I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, so on your website, at the light bottles inside there.
Yeah.
On your website, it actually says 6 to 10 weeks. Is that true? Or do we get super?
Yeah, it is. We're working through a backlog. We've got
That's a call you back on.
Yeah, no, we've got, I think, as a business, sort of a first-class problem of a ton of demand for the product, and we're just ramping up production. So there is a bit of a delay, but we'll get there, and we're delivering them just as quickly as we can.
What are the EEG signals used?
Yeah, so EEG sensor measures brain activity. It measures, the electrical activity in your brain. And so what that allows us to do is to determine your brain's dominant rhythms or your individual frequencies that, based on all of the other data that we've collected, most correspond to the important frequencies for sleep. It's also, if you sleep with the headband on, it will we'll leave it on, and we can use that to kind of get a sleep report over the course of the whole night. But again, you don't have to sleep with it on. You take it off after the 15-minute session.
So how did you determine your target algorithm? So once you diagnose their personal patterns, what are you trying to move it to?
Yeah, so we've actually done years of lab research to get us ready to launch Somni, and we've tried a lot of variations of different frequencies and different protocols for stimulation. And one of the things that we learned is that based on different sleep profiles, I call them sleep signatures, those want to have different mixes of frequencies. So there are some people that they really struggle to fall asleep. You get in bed and your mind races and you just can't shut off. But then once they're out, they're out. And there are other people that actually fall asleep really quickly, but they wake up in the middle of the night and they can't fall back asleep. Both of those suck, by the way. They're both, equally annoying and also damaging to your health. But they're actually different sets of frequencies or different mixes of frequencies that are going to optimally improve those two different situations. And so what the algorithm's looking at is both what are your dominant rhythms, your rhythms that correspond to your sleep signature, but also what's your sleeping pattern, what's your profile. And we can actually predict that based on how we see your brain changing over the 15 minutes that you get into bed.
So it's adjusting the frequency of the tones and also how often it tones?
So it's an electrical frequency, and you can think of it like a blend of frequencies, just like a chord on a piano. It's adjusting the relative loudness of the different notes so that if we emphasize or apply a greater weight to, for example, your alpha frequency, it'll tend to make you much more drowsy. It won't help as much with sleep maintenance or reducing the wake ups. But then if we weight different frequencies, we can improve sleep maintenance, reduce the number of wake events without necessarily compromising your ability to fall asleep or your sleep latency, but it won't help as much. And so we're just trying to algorithmically find the right balancing point that improves your overall sleep quality by as much as possible.
Can you leave it on all night?
You can leave the headband on. It's not going to stimulate all night. And so part of that is there's a sensation during the stimulation. You can feel a little bit of a tingle, but also it's because, we want you to get into natural, healthy sleep. So the metaphor that I like to use is like a kid on a swing, right? If you get that kid going at the right frequency, it's actually lower energy to just keep swinging. And it's the same thing with your brain. We give it a little push on the right path to sleep, and then it's actually lower energy to continue to oscillate at those frequencies.
What brain regions in particular is this stimulating? I have some background. Is it like a one?
Yeah, it's prefrontal cortex.
Plans to try to, is that the regulator that controls the vagus?
Yeah, we've looked at vagus nerve stimulation as well. For sleep in particular, prefrontal cortex is where it's at. If you look at a brain under an MRI system or an FNIR system that can show the whole brain activity, during sleep, brain waves actually originate prefrontally and just kind of wash over the brain front to back. And so the optimal place to stimulate is right on the forehead.
Since you broke the ice, I'll dive there, and I'm much less knowledgeable about brainwaves, but just from one of the clients I worked with, when we're talking about prefrontal, is there by any chance a differential in right hemispheres with gamma frequency?
There may be gamma. Not to get too technical, gamma is it's a very high frequency, and it's not as directly relevant for sleep. It's also less sensitive to entrainment. So the lower frequencies are the ones that we've focused on. Yeah. So we arrived at that number experimentally, but it's kind of the sweet spot. If you go too much longer, it actually risks keeping people up because you need to ask them for more time during their bedtime routine. If you go too much shorter, it's a little less efficacious. And so 15 minutes is kind of the sweet spot. One side benefit that we didn't necessarily anticipate is if you talk to any behavioral sleep scientist, the first thing they'll recommend is adopt a bedtime routine. So even if you don't buy Somni, adopt a bedtime routine that you repeat over and over. It turns out that 15-minute stim session is actually a pretty sneaky, great way of enforcing people having a bedtime routine. So I've been using this for months and months, and now what I do is I'll get in bed, I'll put on my Somni, and I'll read a book for exactly 15 minutes. During the stim session, the app will play some very relaxing music, and I'll have that as my wind down routine. And at the end of that, I just close my book, put everything away, and go to sleep.
Is it anywhere?
Nope. So it's a wellness device.
Well,
And it's just for context, when I talk about electrical stimulation, if you're familiar with a tense muscle stimulator that you can get at Best Buy, order of magnitude less current than that. So it's very, very low levels of electricity. It's just enough to induce a brain.
does it require doctor's orders? Well.
Yeah.
You mentioned the training part of it.
Yeah.
So how long did that take? Did you sit? So we're gonna order it, we're gonna put it in our head, and then how long before do you tell them what is gonna be our standard?
So the customer experience is you just use it. You put it on night 1 and you use it the same way night 10. But the algorithm improves pretty quickly over the first couple of nights that you use it, because every night we're taking a 30-second baseline reading before and after the stimulation. And that's all we need to
And then you'll adjust it again.
Yeah, and when I say we, it's of course,
Yeah.
it's a computer doing it. Nobody is.
You personally.
But yeah, the algorithm learns your individual rhythm. I'm trying my best to sleep well, but of course, I'm also the CEO of an early stage startup. Yeah.
Monopolar or bipolar sensor?
It's a bipolar EEG and a bipolar stimulation. So it's
Well, if you're reading EEG, you do it bipolar. You're reading, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's bipolar.
Yeah.
No gravity.
There's 3 electrodes. There's 3 EEG electrodes. So it's a grounded sensor plus a left and right, and it's dry. And then the stimulation electrodes are a hydrogel sensor.
Say the stimulation is.
It's an electrode called hydrogel. We tested a lot. So if you get into learning about these products, some of them use what's called a wet electrode, which is something that you dip in a saline solution. What we found is that, number one, nobody wants to sleep with that on because the pillow gets wet and your forehead gets goopy. Number two, it's just less comfortable than hydrogel, which hydrogel is a material that is used in a lot of medical applications, but it's a little bit tacky. So it allows you to stick something to your head and have really good contact and great comfort, but then you just take it off and there's no goop or residue.
With the hydrogel, do you feel like periodically replace them?
Yeah, they dry out after 3 uses. So what we do is we send you a new package of electrodes every month. So you always have replacements. And that's, of course, sort of the razor blades in our business model.
What's the cost?
$299 for the headband, and then it's $18 a month for the replacement electrodes.
$18 a month for what?
So there's electrodes, these stimulation electrodes that need to be replaced periodically, and we send a new package to your door every single month. Awesome, guys.